deal.
The statement you just made is the irony here is Minnesota, who they got Jefferson, and you got egg on your face. You've been to the playoffs. They're 0 for 2 since they've got Jefferson. Their coach and the guy who drafted Jefferson are going to get fired. Drafting wide receivers is fantasy football. We all like to get excited about skill players, but football fans, you win by drafting offensive line. You're going to miss on wide receivers, skill players. When you hit the Vikings have Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson, and they can't make the playoffs because they can't draft on the offensive line. Their line is a joke.
Birds 365 here on the JAKIB YouTube channel. Appreciate you getting up and staying tuned with your Mac and Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald. Oh, we've got a third party to add to the mix this morning. I consider myself John McMullen's partner now. Oh, as does our next guest, who partnered for him down on the shore on the ESPN affiliate down there. Mike Gill hops aboard here on Birds 365. How are you, MG?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you? I'm doing well.
There we go. I miss those pipes, Mike. I miss those pipes.
Especially at 8:20 in the morning. They're a little deeper.
Yeah, that's what we want. Mike, well, let's start with Howie Roseman. I know I was taking some hits yesterday. You took a torpedo or two for pointing out that Howie Roseman isn't the worst general manager in NFL history. I always joke, you go back to Amazon when they did All or Nothing for the Eagles. The funniest part of that whole show for me was they were following Howie along, and he explained why he's got the darkest tint on his car because people would recognize him and say the most horrific things. What is it about this guy that Eagles fans don't recognize? I mean, this is a pretty successful franchise over his stewardship.
It's amazing to me. Is he my favorite guy in the world? No. Is he the best GM in the league? Absolutely not. But I feel like people think he's 32nd, and it's not close. Like, this is the death evil of this franchise. And I'm thinking they won a Super Bowl 4 years ago, which they had never done before, which of all the people to give the most credit to, he probably is the highest on that list of who deserves the credit. Were they great afterwards? Not necessarily, but I look back and I say, man, Aaron Rodgers is probably the best quarterback in football. He has one Super Bowl to show for it. Most of these guys, Drew Brees, one Super Bowl. Most of these franchises, one Super Bowl. Unless you want the Philadelphia Eagles to literally be the Patriots or better, you are going to think this guy stinks then. To me, I've said this on my show, and I get a lot of grief for it. If his name wasn't Howie Roseman and his name was just Bill Smith, and he didn't talk the way he talked and didn't look the way he looked, I don't think people would dislike him as much. He just has a look and I think there's a lot of bias against his name and his look. And, he has that kind of, Cole Hamels went through it the year that he was terrible. He had that, that California sound, and people just didn't like him because he just didn't pitch all that well. And then he would talk and he didn't sound like a guy. I feel like Roseman falls into that category with this fan base. And it's a shame because does he hit on every draft pick? No. But I ask,
who does?
Right, who does? Other than Jalen Reagor, who is an absolute bomb, where have they egregiously missed on a guy where you were like, oh, that guy was right there? I mean, even when they took Marcus Smith, which was horrible, there wasn't another guy within about 10 picks that you would have been like, now that guy would have really helped us out. Like, you make mistakes, and for the mistakes he's made, I don't think someone else is coming in here manipulating the cap the way that he does, bringing guys in for 1 year, getting them back out of here, look, people said, well, he put them in this situation. Well, some things happen. Aaron Rodgers wanted to leave because he thought his GM was a jerk. He's still there. They're going to have to figure out how to get out of that mess. So Wentz and Roseman didn't get along, apparently. Well, guess what? He figured a way to get out of it. Sometimes critical thinking is part of the job. Okay, I made a mistake, or somebody don't see. You're not going to see eye to eye with 53 men for 10 straight years. It doesn't happen.
No.
All right. To you two Howie Roseman lovers. And I don't hate the guy, but I think you're both going a little over the top here. How much influence does Howie Roseman have on Jalen Reagor continuing to play for this football team?
That's a fair question. My God, I mean,
because I don't think it's Nick Sirianni. I don't think Nick Sirianni is going back, breaking down that tape on Monday, going afterwards. Oh, Jalen was good. That's a bad break. We still think Jalen's going to be a star.
Yeah.
I think Nick looks at today and goes, man, this guy's hurting us. I got other guys on a bench I could put it. Oh, wait, Howie's on the line?
Do I have other guys on the bench, though?
The fact that Reagor is staying in the lineup as he's hurting them.
Jody loves Greg Ward like we love Howie Roseman. In fact, more.
Right, I was going to say, do they have another guy? I mean, we've had this discussion on my show as well with do they get more if they just put Greg Ward in there? I don't know. Maybe you get 3 catches for 14 yards instead of no catches for 0.
You saw the 27-yard catch this week, right?
You're right. Oh, I like Ward too, but I would say
you like him, but you just threw his numbers out there. It's 3 catches for 14 yards.
He's talking about it. He's talking about a typical
fan list there, big guy.
In Mike's defense, he's talking about a typical week, not a
right. Generally, Ward is not a big
because he doesn't get targeted.
Well, I don't think he averages 27 yards per reception.
Right, yards
was targeted.
He doesn't average 4.2 either.
He was close last year.
No, okay, Ward. I like Ward because I think my point with Ward is he at least is a guy I think Hurts would trust, and he might only get 6 yards a catch, but it might be a 3rd down and 5, and he gets 6. So I don't have a problem playing Ward. My point is, Jody, I think all the GMs, I talked about this with John in the past for years. The biggest problem I have with GMs in almost all sports is the fans want you to admit you made a mistake on a draft pick. It's okay to say, we took this guy. We're going to move on because he didn't work out. I think teams all over the league have that problem of saying, we took this guy, you got to keep playing him. Instead of saying, we took this guy and we think we made a mistake and let's move on. They proved they made a mistake, though, by drafting Smith the next year. That was their message. We made a mistake. This guy isn't who we thought he was. And the year before when they said we drafted Arcega-Whiteside and he's no good either. So they've kind of said we've made mistakes. But you're right. Why do they keep playing them? I think that's a perpetual problem all over the league. Why do these guys keep getting played?
And that's what, and I've told Jody that in the past, Mike. I mean, that is not a Philadelphia Eagles problem. That is an NFL problem. I mean, that, and here's the issue. It's a self-fulfilling thing because, when you see it with Howie Roseman, when you miss on a 1st-round pick, you get killed. It doesn't matter if you made up for it with a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick or a 6th-round pick or a 7th-round pick. Nobody cares. They always look at that 1st-round pick always has that tag on his neck. That was the 1st-round pick. He failed. Danny Watkins failed. You mentioned Marcus Smith failed. All around the league, Isaiah Wilson got cut again. He was a 1st-round pick, I think, in Tennessee, which is, everybody's telling me how great Tennessee is now. And hey, they picked a guy who didn't play more than a handful of downs for them in the 1st round. It happens all over the league. Jeff Gladney's in jail, I think, for domestic abuse. We all know, unfortunately, what happened to Henry Ruggs. There are issues. Now, when somebody fails like Jalen Reagor fails, he fails because he's just not a good football player. Yeah, that's a hit. That's a bad talent evaluation. But as I always said, if you went to the Minnesota Vikings today and said, hey, Wilk brothers, because you can't talk to Rick Spielman or Mike Zimmer, they're going to be out of a job on Monday. Hey, we'll trade you our front office for Justin Jefferson. The Vikings would jump at that deal.
The statement you just made is the irony here is Minnesota, who they got Jefferson, and you got egg on your face. You've been to the playoffs. They're 0 for 2 since they've got Jefferson. Their coach and the guy who drafted Jefferson are going to get fired. Drafting wide receivers is fantasy football. We all like to get excited about skill players. But football fans, you win by drafting offensive line. You're going to miss on wide receivers, skill players. When you hit the Vikings have Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson, and they can't make the playoffs because they can't draft on the offensive line. Their line is a joke. So drafting wide receivers is fun, but it's fantasy football. When you get one, look, if I told you, Jody, you could have a quarterback with 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 100, you'd say, sure. And then I'd say, it's Kirk Cousins, and you'd say, I don't need that guy. So, like, they have an offense where they put up these big yards. I don't know that Justin Jefferson, I'm not knocking the guy. Is he putting up 1,500 yards in this offense? No,
not at all.
But again, here's the question that I would have for you guys as far as Jalen Reagor goes. Which is worse, keeping him, continuing to put him out there, watching him drop footballs, actually hurting the team? Negative yards last week. Negative. Not zero. Negative yards last week. Or putting him on the bench within a year, moving on from him. Which does Howie Roseman get more critiqued for? Continuing to put him out there on the field, and yes, I think we all agree Howie is influencing the coaching staff to continue.
I don't agree with that.
You don't think so? You think Nick Sirianni is the one who's making the decision to put him out there every week?
I think Nick Sirianni would bench Jalen Reagor yesterday if he thought somebody else gave him a better chance to win. I firmly believe that. Now, I'm not going to tell you that at the beginning of the season, one of the reasons Nick was brought here was to obviously be the head coach of this team, but he spent a lot of time with the receiving group, and that was his history in training camp, to the point where I pointed out, I said, why is this guy spending so much time with this receiving group? They really wanted him to work with this group, and they really wanted Jalen Reagor to succeed. But once you got into the nuts and bolts of the season, and Nick has done what he's wanted to do. Nobody went up to Nick Sirianni. We all know Jeffrey Lurie's mentality. He doesn't want this offense, believe me. He reassessed at 2-5 and said,
that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, we can't win games throwing the football. We got to scale this back and take advantage of our offensive line. I believe Nick Sirianni deserves a lot of credit for that. Jeffrey Lurie doesn't want that. Howie Roseman doesn't want that. But right now, that's what they're equipped to do. Nick Sirianni's trying to win football games. I truly believe that. And if he believed benching Jalen Reagor would help him win football games, he would bench Jalen Reagor. He scaled back his playing time.
Not a whole hell of a lot.
I think that just Jody speaks to that. I don't think he thinks he has anybody else. I mean, I agree. I like Ward. I've had the discussion on my show. Why not just play Ward? You're at least getting some production, a guy that like Hurts, trust that he can throw the ball to Ward. Ward's going to catch it. He might not give you big plays, but it's one of those things. I think a lot of times these coaches get enamored with the fact that every once in a while, maybe it's once every 10 games, we can give him a jet sweep and he'll blast off the corner and hit for a 60-yarder, or we can hit a seam pass where nobody's paying attention to him and bang. I don't get it. I agree with you, Jody. I would probably give Ward more playing time in the offense just because this offense is so basic and safe. I don't want to say basic. It's just they run a lot. So when they pass, having a sure-handed guy to catch the ball is, to me, optimal. I mean, last week, it's a tough catch. I'm not knocking him for not catching the ball, but for God's sakes, Reagor, it hits off his forearms. Like, he's not even, like, athletic enough to get his hands in the right spot to catch the ball. Like, my girlfriend's son is 13 when he falls down in the backyard to get his hands on the ball.
Yeah, and this is I don't want to defend Jalen Reagor because he's played poorly, but I'm just trying to say the coaching staff thinks it's the best opportunity to win. Now, to your point, Jody, he topped out playing 86% of the snaps against Dallas the first game. He's been over 80 numerous times. The last 3 weeks, it's been 55, 51, 51. They've curtailed his playing time. They have said, this guy's not doing what we need him to do. So they have curtailed his playing time. But I and I talk about this all the time, a big part of, and Nick has explained this to us, a big part of the running game is the spacing. It's Jalen Hurts on the backside. It's the +1. It's the guys who can run. It's why they play 13 personnel. 2 reasons. They don't necessarily have Devontae. Sometimes they do if they want to throw the ball. But if they don't want to throw the ball, they want somebody with speed. They want somebody to be able to set the edge. But you never want to talk about blocking or spacing when you're talking about an NFL wide receiver. So there's 2 different questions here. Jalen Reagor's unquestionably a failure as a first-round pick in the NFL. Is Nick Sirianni being forced to play him, though? I don't believe that. I just don't believe that. Otherwise, he's lying straight to my face on a consistent basis. And he doesn't lie with other things.
All right, well, hey, that if you believe that Nick Sirianni is in charge and Howie Roseman is backed off influencing, fine. Well, then here's my stance. Shame on Nick Sirianni.
Well, that's who I think.
You want me to move the blame card?
Yes.
To Nick Sirianni? Done.
Yes.
Nick, why the hell is Jalen Reagor continuing to play?
And
Forget about Howie. Answer me to have the coach explain it to me.
And I think that's a more valid criticism.
Okay, now I've never coached NFL football, but I am wearing my championship hat. I did win a World Series this summer, boys, okay? And we had this lunch. We would have this breakfast every morning, and we'd go over the lineup. And you'd have a guy who's not doing anything, but you'd like the other guy, you're not doing anything. This guy was there for the original reason is we thought we'd be the best version of ourselves. It's our job as the coaches to get that out of him. And that's where the coaches put it on them, Jody, where the coaches believe they can get Reagor to be the best version of himself. It's not happening. But they always deep down say, I can be the guy. And that's why these first-round picks keep getting chance after chance after chance, because the coaches believe, sign that guy, I'll get it out of him. And right now they're not getting it out of him. They're not, because look, Reagor to me is I don't know if it's a mental thing now. I mean, Jody, you've been around this town forever. These guys get gobbled up by the fans here, and they just can't get out of their head. And I think he's in that spot now. Is he a talent? I watched him play a lot at TCU. I'm a Big 12 guy, West Virginia. When they drafted him, I didn't think it was that big of a problem. He was shot out of a cannon. The problem I have with him here is he doesn't look like he has any game day speed. Like, he never looks like he has a gear where you're like, that's why they took him. Never. He doesn't look like he has this straight ahead speed. He doesn't have good game day speed to me, and that's why they took him.
Yeah, it's a good point, and probably too much Jalen Reagor talk. So I want to shift to the players who can play, Mike. And are they going to play against the Dallas Cowboys? The key components of this team, and would you play them? Where do you land in the old rest versus rust argument with the playoffs looming? And it's interesting to have a potential. Now the Eagles could be the 6th seed, most likely the 7th seed. You don't often see a 7 seed or a 6 seed resting for the playoffs because you don't have to play for anything in the final week of the season.
Yeah, typically, I mean, I think it's a year-to-year or week-to-week type of thing. Like this year, playing the 3 games in such a short span like they did to get here, I think I'm definitively sitting the guys this week. I mean, this is a team that has had injury issues for the last 3 seasons up and down the roster. They haven't had as many this year injury-wise, they other than the interior guards where they played like 5 right guards and 4 left guards. They really have been healthy on the offensive line. So I'm not taking a chance of getting any of my guys up front hurt or any. I mean, quite frankly, I'm not using, Fletcher Cox. I'm not using Josh Sweat, Darius Slay. I can't get those guys hurt in the last game here. So seeding for me, I'm sure you guys have discussed who's a better matchup. Pick your poison. I mean, I think the Rams roster is probably a little bit more talented right now than the Buccaneers. But do I really want to say, yeah, I'd love to go play Tom Brady on the road. So it's like, I don't know which one is 220, 221, whatever it takes on that one. It's just kind of like, so I'm just letting the cards be dealt to me however they are. I'm going to sit my guys.
Do you believe that Nick Sirianni is being influenced as to who to play or not to play? Or is Howie Roseman, much like with Jalen Reagor, saying, Coach, it's on you, bud. You've done a great job. You've gotten us to this point, into the playoffs. You completely decide who is going to play and not play this week.
I don't know. Maybe that's an organizational type of decision. Does the organization get together and say, hey, we're going to play these guys or not? I don't know that quite frankly, I talked about this on my show a couple weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago. Now, I was a little early to the playoff party. I've been talking about them making the playoffs for quite some time now. People sending me the Jim Mora gifts. I get them almost every single morning. Like, are you kidding me? You're talking about the playoffs? Yeah. I said back in the preseason, this team would probably be a playoff team. That being said, where does Jeff Lurie look at his team and his organization right now and say, we're pretty darn good? Like, what does he think about that? You just said, John, they don't like this offense. They don't want this offense. What does he think about where his team is right now? So in other words, do they care if they're the 6th seed or the 7th seed? They're just in the party. I thought Jeff Mosher brought up an interesting point. Now that you're the 7th playoff team in years, does making the playoffs feel as big anymore if you're the 7th seed? Like if you say, we've been to the playoffs 4 out of 5 years. Well, yeah, you were the 7th seed 1 year. You won 9 games 3 times to get in. I mean, where does the organization stand? Like, do they want to say, no, we want to get to 10 wins. We want to say we won 10. So I think there might be a little bit of that conversation if the front office, Jody, is involved in the conversation. Or they might just say, look, we're not beating Dallas. We don't want to show anything to them. Let them just kind of steamroll us and have their fun.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, the 7th, because I've heard that as well. With the 7th seed, it's not as important as it's not as a bigger standard as it once was. You know, that's similar to the schedule argument to me. Well, the Eagles beat a lot of bad teams. They didn't beat good teams. It's not their fault. It's not their fault they changed the rules. Under the Jody, rules,
on that, I looked because I saw that last night. I said, nobody's beaten anybody. I mean, Dallas has 11 wins. They beat the same teams Philadelphia did, plus New England, who they beat back in October at the time. I looked at this yesterday. 22 of the 32 teams have 9 wins or less. So if you look at most teams' schedules, most teams aren't beating anybody. How many teams on your schedule have multiple or double-digit wins if 22 teams in the league only have 9 or fewer? So if you look at, I think the Tennessee Titans have 7 wins against playoff teams. So by that account, they would be the team that you'd be impressed by the most.
Yeah, and nobody is, interestingly enough. And they look at Tennessee, and maybe they'll make a run towards the playoff. But I still think people look at Kansas City, default to that on the AFC side. But you're right. I mean, the definition of good teams in this league really is you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And
and keep in mind, New York and Washington could have taken advantage of a poor schedule. They weren't good enough to do it.
Yeah. Well, they don't have as good a GMs. That's it. You know, the NFC East is perfect because, you know, the context of the entire league, which is where we bring up the Howie Roseman discussion, you know, okay, you know, you start going down, you start flipping off teams. You can't get out of your own division. I would bet to my bottom dollar every Eagles fan would not rather have the front offices in Dallas, New York, and Washington, but I don't know why they can't see it. Back to the actual game, though. Dallas Cowboys week, not as exciting as it once was, obviously, Mike. Jalen Hurts, you got to talk about the quarterback. Doesn't make a lot of sense. He's still on the injury report with the ankle injury. He looked good, especially on the one run against the Washington football team, but it's evident that the Eagles have scaled back his influence on the running game since the injury. Any need to put him out there? He's still a young quarterback. You know, he's still developing. He still needs as much playing time as possible.
Right.
What's your thought process there?
That's interesting because, you know, a couple of weeks ago, there were like 3 or 4 games left. And it's like, are these 4 games, like he's already played 16 and then another 4. It's like, are these 4 games? Because everyone's like, oh, these are big 4 games for him. were those 4 games going to make or break their decision for what to do with him? You know, like it's 20 games, the demarcation line. Is it 25? So how much does this game factor in? Have they already made a decision on him for next year? Is it a playoff game, how he performs there? So if you're just saying, we just want to get to the playoffs healthy, then you don't play him. He's your starting quarterback. But if you want to evaluate him more, which I don't know why you would with a bunch of backups if you're going that route, and if he's not 100%, like, I wouldn't play Jalen Hurts in this game. I've made my decision. Unless I can make some sort of very fair trade in my direction, which I don't see happening. I mean, Deshaun Watson, that whole mess, I don't think that gets resolved. Russell Wilson, maybe they can pull off something there, but it doesn't sound like, this is the place that he's, wants to go. I don't think you'll be involved for Aaron Rodgers. I'm sticking with Hurts, and I'm taking my 3 draft picks and building around him. I'm not drafting a quarterback in this particular draft. So I've seen enough of Hurts to make me feel I'm okay rolling with him for another year. So I would not play him in this game if my decision is to not play the other starters. Now, if I'm going to play everybody, I'm going to play him with them.
All right, on that decision whether to play or not to play, that is the question. Some of the guys we've had here on Birds 365, some of the guys I have had on my WIP shows this week have gone above and beyond respect for the Dallas Cowboys, almost to the level of fear of the Dallas Cowboys, that they would be the worst team for the Eagles to match up in the first round. Well, if you truly do believe that, you're the Eagles. I'm not sure they do, but if they do, don't you want to beat the Cowboys to assure the fact that you won't get them in the playoffs because you're afraid of them? Because if you don't beat them, then you bring into the possibility that the Cowboys could jump up to number 2 and the Eagles could be at number 7, and you could end up catching them. The only way the Eagles and the Cowboys meet in the playoffs this week is if the Cowboys win this game. If the Eagles win this game, they're guaranteed to not play the Cowboys in the first round. And if some people are afraid of playing the Cowboys, wouldn't you play hard to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, I don't know that the Eagles agree with the guest. That's part of the thing. I say this, Jody, and I agree. I think the Cowboys have the most talented team. Their problem is they have the worst coach. I mean, and in the NFL, that matters. I've had fights with people.
He's still going to be the coach this week, right?
Right.
Okay,
He's terrible. He's terrible. I mean, he got undressed on Sunday. That was an embarrassment, that field goal situation. For them to be where they are with that roster, they should be the number 1 seed going away with that team. They have the best roster, in my opinion. That coach is terrible. He's awful. Garrett was a complete buffoon, and he's nearly Jason Garrett. So if I get into a situation and I have to play them, I almost feel like I can outcoach that guy because coaching in the NFL does have a big impact. So if I'm playing, they're for them to get the 2 seed, though, they need a lot of things to go their way, right? Don't they need the Rams to lose?
Yeah, they need the Bucs to lose, the Rams to lose. Yeah.
Right.
So but if the Eagles win the game, then they guaranteed they're not playing the Cowboys. That would eliminate even the possibility. If the Cowboys win, there's I think it's 2
very small chance.
You know what, though? I might go in with the possibility of beating a team 3 times is difficult. Go ahead and lambaste me and then try to beat me 3 times in a row.
Yeah. Well, last one for me, MG, and listen to Mike every afternoon on 97.3 ESPN South Jersey down the shore. If you had your druthers, if you got to pick, there's 4 potential possibilities. Who would you pick? Tampa Bay, Dallas, we mentioned, the LA Rams, the Arizona Cardinals. I know who I'd pick. It has to do with a coach, but a different coach than you just said.
Oh, if I'm going between those 4, I'd probably go Arizona.
Yeah.
I've been talking about Arizona leaking oil for a while now, which is another reason why I thought the loss that Dallas had on Sunday was just so exasperating. I mean, that's a team that's banged up. They're down 3 offensive linemen. They're down Hopkins and Moore and Connor on offense. They got 3 guys out on defense. They lost 3 in a row. They're on the road, and they basically come in and bamboozle you. I mean, to me, though, I think Arizona's the team that I'd rather play. They're not a great home team either. So if I get a shot to play Arizona, that's the team I feel like I'd rather match up with. And as you mentioned, Kingsbury, who's not a great game manager either, completely outfoxed the other idiot on the other. I can't understand how McCarthy still gets it. I mean, that's one thing. Like when you watch a game as a fan, sometimes like there's certain things like you take pride in. Like I feel like I'd be a really good game manager, calling timeouts, working the clock. Like if I stood next to a coach and just told him when to take timeouts and do like I had that. I can't understand some of the things that guy does when I watch a Cowboy. I say, they'll never win with this guy. Never. That's why Aaron Rodgers has one Super Bowl, because of that idiot is his coach. I can't understand it, guys. Can't understand it.
Gill,
Now,
good job. We appreciate you coming on board. Thanks much. We will talk to you down the road.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike Gill from 97.3, the ESPN Down the Shore. All right, Mac and Mac guys coming back. We're still looking forward to the Eagles and the Cowboys, but even more so the playoffs the week after. Stay with us here on Birds 365.